Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining in for our webinar today. We appreciate you taking the time to join with us. My name is Alan Pym. I'm with APOS Systems and very pleased to welcome you to today's session. Today we'll be looking at UNX Universes and automating the upgrade to UNX Universes. This is a very timely topic, and which would explain the strong response that we've had to today's session. We know that there's a lot of interest in this topic and how to advance on this topic. So we're pleased to be bringing this to you today and to give you a good glimpse into the approach that we have for helping organizations to address this. On our session today, we will be looking at a few different topics. We'll be talking in general about the challenge of UNX adoption, some of the process steps that are central and inherent in making that shift to UNX. And then we'll be looking about automation of that process. What process controls exist in the automation solution that we have. We'll be looking at topics like volume and scalability, and as well also into field mapping. So we do have lots to cover here in our session, and just know that there will be some time for questions at the end. So I'd invite you to locate the question panel within the webinar console, and if you input your questions there, we will get to those questions at the end of our session. So please take a moment to find that and input your questions as things carry on. So again, my name is Alan Pym, and my colleague Fred Walther, who will be joining here in just a few moments. We will be presenting today's content, and both Fred and I are from APOS. If you are new to APOS and knowing about us, I guess the key things for you to know is that we build enhancement solutions for the SAP BusinessObjects and the SAP Analytics Cloud platform. And we have been focused on building enhancement solutions for a very long time. We're over 25 years that we have been in this business, and as a result, we have a very good, strong global customer base who use our solutions with their BusinessObjects environment and with their SAP Analytics Cloud environment. And lots of organizations who are running both of these platforms and use our technologies in all of these circumstances. So we are pleased to be working in this market and know that there's a lot of great things that are underway in SAP Analytics. Some housekeeping. I want you to know that you will receive access to the slides that we present today, and you will also receive a recording to today's session. So that will be sent to you within the next day or so by email. I'd like you to locate the handout segment in the webinar console. There's a section there called handouts. There's some information in the document that's there that you will find that I think will be very helpful for you. And so we'd encourage you to find that and utilize the resources that are there. There will be a feedback form at the end of the session today. And certainly we would ask for you to provide some feedback on today's session. And in just a few moments here, I will be posing a couple of questions to you about status with your BusinessObjects environment. And so we'll look at that. So if you've been on some of our our webinars over the last year and a bit, this slide will look familiar, and it's changed just slightly each time that we present. It's well, I suppose it's a very visual way of thinking about the timelines of BusinessObjects. And there have been past versions of this slide where the picture has been less clear. We've been talking about version 4.3 and service packs, but here we are on the verge of BI 2025 being released. That will be released on March the 12th. So this is coming very, very close. Very recently, we had a session with SAP, with Eric Fenalosa and Gregory Boticcio, who presented about BI 2025. If you were not on that session, I would strongly encourage you to reach out to us and find the recording. That will be listed in the webinar section in the menu items of the APOS website. And by all means, you want to find that to get a good, clear picture of what's going to be released on March the 12th. And so there's a great release that's happening, and really reinforces the fact that there's a good, strong road ahead for BusinessObjects customers. Now, before we get talking about the next steps here and into our topic for today, I want to pose two questions to you. And the first question that I will run here now is simply in terms of the version of BusinessObjects that you are running. So this is helpful for us to get a sense of our audience and what they're running. So are you on BI 4.3? Are you on 4.2? Or are you on an older version of 4.1 or even back into 3.1 or older? I expect that that's unlikely, but some of you may well be in a situation where you have been running on a much older version and it's time to progress to a newer version. Okay, we're doing pretty well here. If there's any further inputs, if you would, that would be great. All right, just the last couple of votes if you have an input. And all right, we'll close things right there. Okay, so we have the vast majority of you are on BI 4.3, and 10% of you on 4.2, and 5% of you on 4.1. So we've got some rounding here that takes us just above 100%. Sorry, I haven't shared that out, but you should be able to see that now. So 86% 4.3, 10% 4.2, 5% 4.1. Okay, that's helpful. Now, the second question and the final question is relative to your next upgrade. Really interested to know, our audience today, what you anticipate your timing will be for your next upgrade. Are you currently in the process of upgrading? Is this something that you see in the next 6 months? Is this 6 to 12 months? Is it more than a year? Or currently there are no specific plans for upgrading? If you can put in your best estimate, that would be good. All right, votes are coming in. And I think we were doing quite well here. All right, let's close that off. I'll share out the results. And yeah, you'll see 17% of you are currently migrating, 13%, you see that in the next 6 months, 30% in the 6 months after that, 13% more than a year, and 26% of you no specific plans for upgrade at this point in time. All right, that's great feedback. Thank you for sharing that out. And yeah, we have a good audience today. So I think from each of you thinking about your counterparts in other organizations, yeah, got some good valid feedback there right now. So a topic that we have been discussing for a while is about the BusinessObjects future and regrouping for that as the path forward has become more clear and more optimistic and really quite solid and strong. We know that lots of organizations, certainly our customers and even those beyond, are looking at the steps that they need to be taking to move forward. And we have these 6 recommendations that we've been talking about getting a clear understanding of what you have in your system. If there's unsupported content that if there's content that will not be supported in future versions like BI 2025, then you need to be thinking about what to do there and taking action about that. Lots of people have a deployment that has surplus content within it that's being unused. And so right-sizing that system content is quite key. Upgrading to version 4.3, that really it's an important step to be readying for BI 2025. And of course, BI 4.2 is now out of official support. So that of course is a very strong motivator for most organizations as well. The topic of upgrading universes will be focusing on that. And then lastly, wherever you can, automating for efficient management. And for most organizations, they're being asked to do more with less resources. So automation is always a key topic to be able to address that. But of course, today our focus of our discussion is on UNX Universes and what to do there. And this really takes us to the topic of the UNX Adoption Challenge and how this all plays part of preparing for BI 2025. And that is driven by the fact that when we get to BI 2025, UNV Universes will not be supported. So this is not fresh news. This is something that SAP has made aware for a very long time now. Interestingly, though, there are still many organizations that have not prepared for this, and that's fine. Lots of organizations have taken a more measured approach in making this change, but the reality is there's a lot of web intelligence reports that rely on UNV Universes. And because you're on the call today, that probably goes without saying. And just this inherent challenge that when we get to BI 2025, you need to be on UNX. So that means that all of the universes need to be upgraded, but that's only part of the story. The second part of the story is that all the Webby reports that are connected to those universes, they need to be addressed. The connection needs to be changed from the old universe to the new universe. And it's very safe to say that the second bullet point is definitely the larger challenge, the more time-consuming aspect to this. So dealing with this in a manual way is heavy. It's a very heavy manual process to go through this, and the steps that are involved, and we'll be really centralizing around these steps as we go through our discussion today. But the manual conversion of those universes from UNV to UNX, publishing those new universes into the system, repointing all of the reports from the old universe to the new, verifying and validating that the new repointed Webby report is functioning as it should, and then publishing that repointed web intelligence report. So to do those steps manually, it's quite involved. And we have worked with a few customers to put time estimates to this. And so this is the feedback that we have had from customers, putting some estimates around what's involved here. And to do that upgrade of a universe, not particularly time consuming, about 5 minutes, but we know that the number of universes is usually a fairly manageable number. When it gets to the repointing, though, this is where time-consuming efforts really start to add up, because if it's 10 to 15 minutes per report times how many ever reports that you have, this starts to add up. And then when we put verification and validation into this, we can see that per report, the time really starts to add up. And if we take an example like that one of 50 universes and perhaps 5,000 Webby reports and associate those timelines, multiply those out for the number of reports, we can see that this becomes a very unruly project to do in a manual way. And if we start to associate some costs to that, well, it becomes quite daunting and challenging. So depending on the size of your environment relative to this example, you may be able to do some calculations about that. And in fact, I'll be mentioning here in a moment about how you can do some calculations to that. So we've been talking about this for a long time. You need to automate this process. The ability to automate this makes this time savings, the cost savings, the ability to execute this project in a timely manner and use your resources in a much wiser way than doing this in a manual process. This is smart management, and customers that we have worked with have done a terrific job of using the technology to complete this project. So the technology that we're talking about here is our APOS Web Intelligence Migrator. And as we go on here today, you might hear us talk the short form of Webby Migrator. And just know that that's the technology that we're talking about. I want to mention a couple of success stories here during our session today. The first one is a large financial organization that we have worked with who's been involved in life and health insurance and investment services. They have a number of global operating units, but strongly focused in North America. Their deployment is one where they were on 4.3. This is a long-time BusinessObjects customer with long-term commitments to the platform. They had over 100 universes and over 4,000 Webby reports. And for them, it became very clear that automation was the way to address this. So in order to manage the time and resources that they have efficiently, automation became the clear path forward. And so you can see the quote here from the technical director of the team that we worked with. They were able to make this big project well managed and executed in a very effective timeline, and they achieved their project goals really ahead of schedule. So that's been a great win for them. They were able to close the chapter on UNV Universes, and they're very well positioned for their move to BI 2025, which will be happening, I believe, later this year or into next year. All right, so with all of that said, let's get further into discussion about the Webby Migrator solution, and I want to invite Fred Walther into the discussion. Fred is a longtime solution consultant with APOS and is working on these kinds of topics all the time with customers. So Fred, thanks for joining the call.
Yeah, thanks, Alan.
All right, so just to kick things off, to start, Fred, maybe you could get us going with just a high-level description of what Webby Migrator is.
Sure. So it's a Windows-based solution, and it's focused on automating this repointing process, as well as upgrading UNVs to UNXs. So it's a tool that will make the whole job a lot easier.
Okay, so let's carry on from here. And I mentioned 5 steps before, and they align directly to the 5 process steps that we have here. Fred, just a quick mention of these, and I know you're going to go into each one in more detail, but these 5 steps.
Yeah, so scanning your system and inventorying your contents, what do you have, bulk converting your universes from UNV to UNX, the heavy lifting, which is the repointing of the reports, and then validating that that repointing was successful, and then committing the changes, because one of the things that we do is we make the changes on a copy of the report, and then once we're satisfied the copy is correct, then we commit the changes back to the original. So those are the steps that we're going to have a look at here.
Okay, so let's get into each one.
Sure. So when we scan the system, we want to get a clear understanding of what we have in our system, and not only what we have, but what we have that we can get rid of. So identifying the content that we can exclude from the upgrade, reports that haven't been used in a long time, for example, universes that are not being used anymore. So, and the other thing we can do is capture a detailed structure of the reports, so we can reference that later on in the process. To do that, what we're doing is we're going to scan the BusinessObjects environment and capture the metadata about the reports, the universes, the usage of those things, and all of that information is going to be stored in our database. So the security, the report development, the analytics, all of that information is captured. And when we scan the system, of course, the first time we scan, we're going to gather everything. Subsequent scans are only going to get the delta, what has changed since the last scan. And then with that data, we're going to be able to analyze all of the information. So here we see a few screenshots of reports that are built against the data that we've collected. So specifically things like usage reports, and being able to use that metadata that we've captured to find out how the reports are constructed, what database elements are being actually used in the reports. So finding, as we said, underused reports or non-used reports, and understanding the content of those reports.
Okay, and then into the next step of converting universes.
Right. So there's a couple of ways to convert the universes. So first of all, we have to understand which universes have to be converted. And then, of course, as we mentioned before, which we can ignore because they just haven't been used. They've expired, they've lived out their usefulness, nobody's using them anymore. And we want to be able to convert the UNV to a UNX, create a UNX out of that very quickly and easily. We know that we can do that in the IDT. So if we're working one universe at a time, it's quite easy to load up that universe and say, now make me a UNX out of this. And so now you'll have two objects, the old UNV and the new UNX. But if we have a number of universes, then we can look at converting them in bulk. So being able to select them in bulk and say, right, these 20, these 30, these 50 universes, I would like you to convert them all to a UNX. And again, then we'll have the old UNV and the new UNX existing.
And then into the really heavy activity with repointing.
Yeah, you got that right. It's really a heavy activity. So when we're repointing these Webby reports, some of the things we want to do is work in manageable chunks. Don't feel that you have to rip the Band-Aid off and do everything at once. Rather, work in manageable chunks. Start with a particular folder or a business unit or a particular set of reports that connect to a universe. So that's really key, is to do things in ways that are easy to work with, easy to validate, easy to maintain, and small chunks of work. And doing many small chunks is probably going to be better than trying to do everything all at once. Want to worry about retaining any custom SQL. So if you've modified the Webby's SQL statement in some way, now we're not talking here about freehand SQL. That's a different story. There's no universe in that case, so you don't have to worry about that. But you may have modified your SQL, and you want to make sure that's maintained. And also, we want to look at spreading the process load across multiple machines and perhaps having multiple users working on this. So we'll take a look at some of these things. So the first thing we're going to be looking at is to decide which reports and universes, et cetera, we want to work with. So we can select the reports we want to work with by a number of different criteria. So typically that might be the universe that they're connecting to, but then again, you may have reports that connect to multiple universes, have multiple queries on it. So perhaps you want to work on the location and choose a folder or a business unit. And then once we've chosen those, we'll create a project. And we can create as many projects as we want and give them meaningful names rather than simply using a date timestamp name. And then what we would do is we would process those reports with a universe connection matrix, a conversion matrix rather, that we've created that says, UNVA matches to UNXA, and then process all those reports at that time.
Fred, I know you're going to walk us through a live demonstration here in a few moments, but these screenshots are helpful to get a first glimpse. But let's move into the validation of the reports.
Right. So that's got to be key, is to know that the reports can be trusted, that they're going to return the same data today as they did yesterday before the repointing. We want to make sure the validation happens quickly. And we want to automate this so we don't have to sit there and open up report A, check it, open up report B, check it. We want to have that automated. And that way we don't have to worry about just selecting a representative set of reports. We can validate them all if we need to. So being able to do that, we want to be able to do it very quickly. And so when we're doing the validation, a couple of things we want to ensure are set correctly, and that is that first of all, the right user is being selected, and select how the validation occurs. Are we checking the data types and the data values? And we could also get into some more detailed validation, so excluding certain rows or columns from the validation. Perhaps those columns or rows contain date timestamps, and of course they're going to be different between the old report and the new report. So we might want to exclude those sorts of things when we're doing that.
Right, and then that brings us to the commit phase.
Right, and one of the things that I mentioned earlier is that everything we're doing is we're making a copy of the webbies first and doing the repointing on the copy of the report, so that we haven't disturbed the originals yet. People can keep using these while we're going through this process. Once we're satisfied that the copies are correct, then we have the choice when we're committing. Are we going to commit back to the original, which is probably 99% of the clients will do that, or we could say, no, I want to use the copy of the report going forward. One of the other things we want to ensure is that any recurring schedules that were set are going to be maintained going forward. And so when we do the commit phase, we can see here, this is what the commit screen looks like. And we can also do a backup, creating an LCM beer file of the reports before we begin, so that if anything should go wrong, we've got everything backed up. We can restore that LCM beer file. And then the commit phase, we want to ensure that we retain the original report owner, the submitter, for any recurring schedules that exist.
Okay, so again, the screenshots are great, but having you walk us through the solution in action, that will be really helpful.
Sure. So let me just share my screen here.
You can see that now.
Oops. There we go. Okay. So what I'm going to be working with is a set of reports that I've got in a folder on my system here. Just we'll have a quick peek at the reports here. You can see that the report universe is the UNV. I've got a few reports. They're using the extreme, the eFashion universe. A couple are using a couple other universes. I've got one here that points to multiple universes, and so we want to just show the fact that we can work with webbies that have multiple data providers. So our Web Intelligence Migrator application, we would come in here and we'd be able to search. We can query directly against the BusinessObjects environment, and as I mentioned before, a few different criteria. We can also use a search against the metadata that we've captured, and we can build a query against that metadata and use that using the different fields here. So looking at when was a report last updated, those sorts of things. We can even get to when was the report last used, so only select reports that have been used in the last 6, 12, 9 months, whatever the case may be. So running those queries, quite easy to do, and that allows us to really fine-tune which reports that we want to work with. For today, I'm just going to do a quick BI search here, and I'm going to look for reports that exist in a particular folder. And so what I'll do is I'll search my folder structure here and just select that folder that we looked at in the CMC just a few moments ago. So there's my Fred sample reports, and I'll just close that. And I could add multiple folders here. They'll just become a separated list if I did that, and then we'll get the results back in our grid. So once we've got the reports in the grid, we can select all of them, or we could just select a few of them. It's up to you how you want to do that. And then the first thing we would do is we would add these to a project. And as I mentioned before, the default behavior is it's going to create a date timestamp project name, but of course you could change that to whatever is meaningful. So I'll just call this webinar. Okay, so once we've got the project created, the next step would be to choose the reports that in the project that we want to work with. We don't have to do all of them at one time. Here I've got just 13 reports, so I will. But what we would do then is we would process these, and we would have created a universe conversion matrix that says this old eFashion universe is going to match up with the new eFashion UNX universe, and so forth. And again, we'll create, or rather select the universe conversion matrix that is being used here, and just choose that one. And the first thing we want to do is to create the copies of the Webby reports. As I said, we don't want to mess with the originals to start with until we're satisfied that everything is correct. So I'm going to create a folder off of the main folder where they exist currently. I'm going to call it convert, and then I'll just add the Webbies, and I'll give them the same name that currently exists. For consolidation and tolerance here, we're going to tell it to convert all data providers all at one time. And then here on the miscellaneous tab, we probably want to update the query specifications. We don't have to. We can maintain any default prompt values and keep any custom SQL statements that we may have modified when we built the Webby reports. And then we do the execution. The first thing it's going to do is going to copy these reports from their existing location to the location that I chose. And if we take a look in the CMC now, we can see that this would have automatically created a new folder. If I just refresh this now, come on, mouse. So there's my convert folder. And what we'll see here is we've got a copy of the Webby reports in this folder. And we can see that nothing has happened to them yet. It's going through the process. Actually, I may be too quick. Maybe it may have executed the conversion. Yes, it has. It was quicker than I thought. It's converted them from the UNV to the UNX. So if we go back to our application here, we can see that, yeah, I wasn't quick enough to catch it. It happened that fast for me. It copied the Webbies, and then it updated the repointing process, and everything was successful doing that. Okay, so that's the repointing phase, and as I said, that's really the heavy lifting. But how can I be sure that all of these Webbies are still going to return the same data today that they did yesterday? So this would be the validation phase. So what I'm going to do now is to choose the validation mechanism. And as I said before, there are a number of different choices for validation. I'm going to just choose validate the data types and the data values. And I could get into the advanced if I needed to, where I can choose specific columns and perhaps only the first X number or last X number of rows. But just to keep things simple for here, we'll just choose to validate using the standard method. And so what will happen here is it will actually run both reports. It'll run the original, and it'll run the copy of the report against the UNX. And it'll compare those two. So it'll export them to Excel, and then behind the scenes, it's doing a comparison of those outputs to make sure that it's returning the same data as it did yesterday. So one of the things that you may want to look at is row restrictions. My universes and my data is very tiny, so it's going to happen very quickly. But you may want to set some row restrictions on your universes so that if you've got Webby reports that take 15 minutes to run or 20 minutes to run, you may not want to wait that long for the validation. So you might want to set some row restrictions on both the UNV and the UNX so that the validation phase won't take quite so long. So we'll just wait for this to finish. It should happen fairly quickly. There we go. Validation has completed successfully. So that's great. So now we've got no errors in our validation. So our final phase now is to commit this. So again, if I look back in the CMC, we can see that we've got here the reports in the convert folder. Here are the original reports. and the original reports are still pointing to the old UNV. We haven't get that mouse working there. We haven't modified the originals yet. So that's what we're going to do next, is execute the commit phase. And so I'll just select all of these reports, and then we'll do the commit phase here. So again, I want to choose the commit to the original Webby documents. I want to maintain the submitter for any recurring schedules. I can create the LCM beer file, and I can include security if that was appropriate. Generally, you're not setting security at the report level. You're setting security at the folder level, so there's probably no need to include security. We can also choose to purge any data from the Webby before we commit that, and then the commit phase will run, and all of the actions that were executed against the copies of the reports will now be executed on the originals. So now my originals will be pointing to the UNX. One of the things to know is that it will retain the same ID and CUID and location, obviously, that it was originally. So when it does this merge process, we won't lose anything. So people will still be able to find the reports in the same folder that they were originally, and they'll have the same ID and CUID that they used to have. So if I go to the CMC and take a look at that, and I'll take a look at this same report here, and now if I look at the default settings and go down to report universes, oops, there we go. It's still pointing to, it's now pointing to the UNXs, but it still retained the same ID and CUID values as we did before. So in a nutshell, that's the repointing process.
All right, that's great. Thank you, Fred. That really gives great perspective on how this all functions. And obviously, there's going to be quite a range of deployment sizes that people are working on, and our listeners here today, there'll be a lot of variance in the kinds of deployment sizes and all the factors that are going on within their environment. But we want to come back to a couple of key topics here, and one of those is this matter of projects. And you mentioned it a couple of times, but I think it's worth us spending a little more time on that. And then the topic of high availability and scalability, that I think is quite key. I think I'm got a little sharing problem here, so bear with me.
There we go.
There we go. Fred, can you see that okay?
Yep, I can. Yep. So yeah, project structure and high availability. These are two topics we want to look at. So I mentioned creating these projects and giving them meaningful names. You can see that when I created the project, it was giving it today's date timestamp, which is fine, but giving it a meaningful name allows us to know that we worked on particular reports, particular folders, particular business units, and we're working in manageable chunks, anywhere between 1 and 500 reports perhaps at a time. So that, again, we're not having to, as I said before, rip the Band-Aid off, and hopefully we don't bleed all over the place. So working in a manageable chunks helps us to control over things and ensure that things are going to work okay. Here we see a list of projects that were created as we were doing the repointing, and this could be based on the universe they're connecting to, a geographical location, a department that exists. So however you want to name your projects, you want to give it a meaningful name, and then work on them when you have the time. So you could create the projects ahead of time and then come back tomorrow or next week and then start working on the projects. So however you want to work, you don't have to do everything all at once.
Just a further comment on that, Fred, I know that when we've worked with organizations, exactly to your point, they want to have the flexibility that they can be segmented in their actions and department by department, because not all departments are going to be ready to act on making the migration with their content at the same time. So that really helps manage the process flow and the project flow across the whole organization and all the different project teams that might be related.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so when we talk about high availability and scalability, what we're looking at here is working on many objects at one time. So there are a few ways we can do that. Obviously, the Web Intelligence Migrator, Web Migrator, can be installed on multiple machines and have different people working on different aspects of it. That's one way we can do it. But if we're working on these many thousands of reports and we have access to multiple machines, we could automate this with less user intervention and create batches. And these batches can be executed across multiple machines. And we can monitor those batches. We can pause and resume them as required. So having this high availability aspect can be very helpful. If we have a limited number of people that we can assign to the project, that one or two people who are assigned to it can create these batches, and then these batches can be executed and automate this process.
Yeah, and to go along with that, this is the second success story that I wanted to mention, a customer story, and this is work that we've done with a very large telco company, one of the largest in the world, a very big organization, and their scenario is one where at the time they were on 4.2 and multiple business objects deployments. So this wasn't one single deployment, but across all of those deployments, they had over 160 universes and above 400,000 reports. So altogether, this was a lot. It was a lot to tackle, and for them, the notion of trying to do this manually, I mean, it was inconceivable. So their scenario was one where they were looking to upgrade to 4.3. They were in the process of that, and then BI 2025 is most definitely in their plans, which was part of the motivation, but also part of their motivation was that they were making some database changes where UNV support was going to be challenging for that segment of their report. So they wanted to tackle the full range of those and make the conversions happen. And of course, the manual challenge was just not going to be viable. And they needed to make all of this happen so that they could get these various projects on track. So it really was a great outcome, and there's still a little bit left to do across all of those projects, but it's been a great success so far, and their ability to move that. Now, this is much bigger than many of you might be working with or are likely to be working with. This is a big one, but I'm going to guess that there's probably a few of you on the line today whose deployments are at least in the ballpark of this, and so this sort of bulk and high volume capability is very notable.
Right. Well, one of the other things that we wanted to touch on here today is custom field mapping. As we were discussing converting UNVs to UNXs earlier, we were assuming a one-to-one correlation. So I take this UNV and I just make a UNX out of it. And that's probably how most organizations will work. But some organizations are going to take advantage of this repointing process and say, you know what, I really need to clean up my UNV universes. I want to make them more user-friendly. I want to rename objects. I want to move them to different folders. And now what do I do when I do a repointing? How can I make this happen? Because there isn't that one-to-one correlation. And what we can do is create a custom field mapping project and choose which objects and which classes are going to be pointing to the UNX in a different folder or object name. So that's quite easy to do. And when we execute the repointing process, we would just be sure that we choose that project, and now any reports that were utilizing the old UNV and we're repointing to the new UNX, that mapping will take place during that process.
Great, that's definitely a nice value add that we've heard from customers, and really helps to streamline that kind of process. Okay, so great. Thank you, Fred. You've walked us through a lot of content here, and we want to get to some questions that have come in. So perhaps you can refer to the questions that have come in and get ready to respond to those. If anyone has remaining questions, please input those now. Fred will be giving some feedback here shortly. But as far as Web Intelligence Migrator, again, as Fred has described, the solution can help you inventory your content. It can help you bulk convert your universes, high volume repointing of your reports, validation and commit, and all of this done within a strong process structure. And so lots of great benefits there to help you get this project overcome and allow you to focus really on the future. There are a few resources that we want to draw your attention to, and really next step items. Again, back to that handout panel within the webinar console, there's a link to a project cost estimator, and this will really help you take those numbers that we talked about earlier, apply and input your numbers, how many universes you have, how many reports you have, and help you put some calculation to generally the cost of the UNX adoption project. This may be very helpful for as you communicate with others in your organization about the size of the challenge ahead, and can be very helpful in making sense of investment in automation tools to make this all happen. There is a freemium offer that we are making, and this allows you to get started with the Web Migrator solution and focus on a select number of reports and universes to work with, and this really can help you gain confidence in what the solution can do for you and get some productive use out of it as a start into your project. In addition to our session today, though, we would really recommend that we do a solution discovery call together. And so working with your account manager at APOS, we can arrange a time to have a more focused conversation about your particular deployment and really zero in on elements of questions that you have about the solution and how it could be a fit. So focus in on that if you would. I do want to mention an event that 2 weeks from now, Fred and I will be back with a follow-up session. This will be on the 13th of March, which will be the day after BI 2025 is released. We'll be debriefing about the release and also have one or two guests joining us to talk about that release. And then we'll be focusing in on how to automate some of the specific migration steps. Now, today we've been focused on automation for the UNV to UNX process, but we'll be looking at broader BI 2025 migration steps that you can automate and speed and strengthen that move. In that webinar console, in the handouts, you will find, and as well in the questions, you will find that there is a link to that session. So you may want to go there right now and register yourself for the March 13th event and get your spot reserved. I want to put all of this in the context of the broader suite of solutions that we have of APOS solutions. In the bottom right, we've talked about Web Intelligence Migrator today, and there is a lot of automation that we bring to the management and care and control over your business objects environment. As I noted earlier, many organizations, and probably each of you on the line, are feeling that there are still significant responsibilities that go along with managing this environment, but you are probably getting fewer resources and a reduced amount of time to address this, maybe fewer staff members as well. This kind of automation can help you keep things functioning in a very effective way and really reduce the amount of resources that needs to be applied. So a lot of great technology here to help you do that. And similarly, for those of you on the call who are using SAP Analytics Cloud, I mentioned earlier about our technologies for SAC as well. And so we're listing these here with our Publisher for Cloud and our Data Gateway solution. We'd welcome discussion about that. If you're not connected with us on LinkedIn, please take a moment and get connected with us. And specifically, if you have interest in Analytics Cloud, there is a group that we're involved with called SAP Analytics Cloud (SAC), and we would welcome you to reach out and join that group as well. All right, Fred, some questions.
Yeah, there have been a few questions. Firstly, do I have to install this on my BusinessObjects machine? No. No, Webby Migrator needs to be installed on a Windows box, and we do have requirements for the .NET SDK and client tools to be installed, but you would not want this to be installed on your BusinessObjects server. It would be a separate box, either a physical or virtual. It doesn't really matter. Let's see. Okay, this is a good one. Will the object migrator work on a UNX environment? So the work is done on a Windows box, but if your BusinessObjects environment is Unix, Linux, I believe the conversion should still happen okay. The objects will still work on the Unix environment, but of course the work has to be done on the Windows box. For a Webby report that has multiple data providers, do you have to repoint all of the universes at the same time, or can you repoint one at a time? You could do one at a time, but it would be best to do it all at once and just sort of get that over with. I haven't done it where I do one report at a time and come back, or one universe at a time and come back to it, but I would recommend doing it all at once. Someone asks that UNVs aren't supported anymore in BI 2025. What does that mean? What will happen to those UNV universes? What will happen to the reports? That's a good question, and I'm unsure exactly what will happen. Our understanding is that they will not function anymore. So best to make sure that everything is converted before the move to 2025. And can my default Webby prompts be saved? Yeah, well, yeah. That's actually a good question. We had a client just recently that had exactly that that problem. We modified the application slightly so that we can save any default prompts for the Webby. So it's a timely question. Yeah, we do have a question regarding pricing, so I'll leave that to talk to your APOS sales rep regarding that.
Yeah, I think that's right, Fred. Just a general comment, though. We want everybody to know that this is not a big, heavy, costly solution. So that is rarely a barrier for use of this solution, despite all of the value that it's delivering. So we know that it's a great fit that way. Okay, terrific. Thanks for those responses, Fred, and thanks everyone for the questions. Let's draw things to a close here. Really appreciate everyone's interest today, the ability to connect and go through all of this content. Hopefully this has been very helpful. We do look forward to next steps. Please join us on March 13th, and you will receive material from us in the next day or so, and look forward to communicating with you in times ahead about exactly this topic and others. Last mention is, as you're logging out today, there is a feedback survey that we would welcome your feedback about today's session. We prompted that that feedback when you log out. And it's just a few simple questions, if you would. That would be greatly helpful. So with that, thank you everyone for your time and attention today, and have a great rest of the day.